Gobekli Tepe, an archaeological site in southeastern Turkey, is one of the most mysterious ancient structures ever discovered. Believed to have been constructed around 9600 BC, it predates Stonehenge by over 6,000 years and the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000. The civilization responsible for it is very mysterious, as no written records, known rulers, or clear cultural lineage have been identified. The builders of Gobekli Tepe appear suddenly in the archaeological record, equipped with surprisingly advanced knowledge of architecture, astronomy, and stone carving, at a time when humanity was supposedly limited to small, nomadic hunter-gatherer groups. This abrupt leap in sophistication is a major reason why Gobekli Tepe continues to baffle historians and archaeologists alike. The site itself consists of massive stone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in circular enclosures. These stones are decorated with intricate carvings of animals and abstract symbols, suggesting a symbolic or religious purpose. Yet the tools needed to move and carve such stones were believed not to exist during the time of its construction. There is no evidence of domesticated animals or wheeled carts, making the logistics of its creation unexplainable with current understanding. Many scholars now propose that sites like Gobekli Tepe flip the traditional timeline of civilization. Instead of agriculture leading to religion and monumental architecture, Gobekli Tepe suggests the opposite, that the desire to build sacred or communal places may have driven people to settle and farm. If true, this civilization might have been the catalyst for the Neolithic Revolution itself, triggering the transition from foraging to farming across the ancient Middle East region. As for their downfall, the mystery deepens. Around 8000 BC, Gobekli Tepe was deliberately buried under tons of earth. The act appears to have been carried out with great care, preserving the site in near pristine condition. Why this was done remains unknown. There is no evidence of violent destruction, invasion, or natural disaster. Some speculate it was a ritualistic closure, while others believe the site was buried to protect it from something or someone. After the site's burial, the people who constructed it seemingly vanished from history. It's possible they assimilated into emerging agricultural communities or migrated to other regions, dissolving their unique culture in the process. The land itself changed dramatically after Gobekli Tepe's burial, with the rise of agriculture and new settlement patterns. The region eventually became part of various Mesopotamian, Assyrian, and later Islamic empires. Gobekli Tepe remained hidden for millennia, its significance completely forgotten until its rediscovery in the 1990s. Gobekli Tepe's builders are a ghost civilization, known only by their work, yet profoundly influential in ways we are only beginning to understand. Their sudden rise, unexplained capabilities, and mysterious self-erasure challenge nearly every assumption about early human societies. Who they are, what they believed, and why they built such an extraordinary monument remain among the greatest unanswered questions in archaeology today. The Norte Chico civilization, also known as the Carol civilization, is one of the oldest known societies in the world, and by far the oldest in the Americas, flourishing along the north-central coast of present-day Peru between roughly 3000 BC and 1800 BC. This ancient society remains an enigma. Its capital city, Carol, predates the Olmecs by over 1500 years, and existed at the same time as the early dynasties of Egypt and the Sumerians in Mesopotamia. Despite its age and significance, remarkably little is known about the Norte Chico people, which only deepens the mystery surrounding them. They left behind no pottery, no written language, and no artwork that clearly reveals their beliefs or identity. What makes Norte Chico so mysterious is how advanced it was at a time and place that should not have supported such complexity. The civilization constructed large urban centers, monumental architecture including pyramids, sunken circular plazas, and intricate irrigation systems, all without the apparent use of tools typically associated with such development. Even more puzzling is the civilization's apparent lack of warfare or defensive structures. Unlike other ancient societies of the same period, there is no evidence of military activity, weaponry, or fortification. This absence has led to speculation that Norte Chico may have been a peaceful theocracy or trade-based society, relying heavily on shared ideology and cooperation rather than conquest. Another compelling mystery is the economy. Norte Chico thrived in an arid region with limited rainfall, yet managed to develop sophisticated agriculture through irrigation. Cotton was a major crop, likely used for textiles and fishing nets. Interestingly, their diet appears to have relied more on ocean resources than on farming. Their marine-based economy challenges long-held beliefs that agriculture was the prerequisite for urban development. At the height of its influence, Carol and its surrounding settlements formed a network of at least 25 major sites. Though Norte Chico lacked ceramics and apparent artistic expression, it demonstrated a high level of organization and planning. The alignment of their architecture with celestial bodies suggests an early knowledge of astronomy. Their use of quipu-like knot systems, precursors to the later Incan method of record-keeping, hints at early administrative sophistication. The Norte Chico civilization remains as unclear as its rise. By around 1800 BC, the cities were gradually abandoned. There is no evidence of invasion or natural disaster on a scale that would explain a sudden collapse, but it's possible that environmental changes, such as a decline in marine productivity or shifts in river systems, made the area unsustainable. After the fall, the people of Norte Chico did not vanish, but rather likely integrated into newer emerging cultures across the Andean region. Their innovations, specifically in city planning, agriculture, and possibly religious structure, set foundations that would influence later civilizations like the Chavan, Mochi, and ultimately the Inca. The land once occupied by Norte Chico continued to be inhabited, though its grand cities were forgotten until their rediscovery in the late 20th century. Today, Norte Chico challenges the very narrative of civilization's origins. It suggests that complex society could arise without writing, warfare, or even ceramics, elements traditionally deemed essential. The ancient kingdom of Dilmun is one of the most mysterious civilizations in the ancient world, often described in Mesopotamian texts as a sacred, perfect land full of abundance, purity, and divine presence. Dilmun remains largely hidden in the shadows of history. Believed to have existed from around 3000 BC to approximately 600 BC, Dilmun was likely centered in modern-day Bahrain and parts of the eastern Arabian Peninsula, including coastal areas of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Despite being referenced frequently in Sumerian and Akkadian writings, Dilmun left behind no extensive written records of its own, which has made reconstructing its history difficult. Dilmun's importance during its peak was far greater than its modest size suggests. It acted as a vital trading hub linking Mesopotamia to the Indus Valley civilization and beyond. Goods such as copper from Oman, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, and ivory from the Indian subcontinent flowed through Dilmun's ports. Mesopotamian texts describe it as a place where the gods once lived, and it is even considered by some scholars to be a prototype for the biblical Eden, which adds another layer of mysticism to it. Part of what makes Dilmun so mysterious is the blend of myth and reality that surrounds it. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Dilmun is mentioned as a place of immortality and peace, a sort of divine frontier. Yet archaeological evidence points to real cities, burial sites, and trade infrastructure. The discovery of thousands of burial sites in Bahrain, dating from the early to middle Bronze Age, indicates a highly organized society with religious or ritualistic practices. However, few buildings and no royal palaces or temples have been definitively identified, further deepening the puzzle of who the Dilmunites really were and how they lived. By the end of the 2nd millennium BC, references to Dilmun began to diminish in Mesopotamian records. Its decline seems to have been gradual, likely due to a combination of shifting trade routes, changes in regional political power, and possible environmental changes. As maritime trade routes became more sophisticated and powerful empires rose in Mesopotamia and Persia, strategic importance dwindled. After the fall of Dilmun, its people likely assimilated into surrounding cultures. The region continued to be inhabited and later came under the influence of various empires, including the Babylonians, Persians, and eventually the Islamic caliphates. Today, Dilmun represents one of the most compelling unsolved chapters of early human civilization. It was a thriving culture of traders, builders, and spiritual significance, yet it left behind very little information for us to be able to figure out its true importance. The combination of mythological recognition, geographic importance, and historical silence makes Dilmun one of the most hauntingly mysterious civilizations of the ancient world. Its rediscovery has just begun, and the sands of Bahrain may still hold answers to questions that have lingered for over 5,000 years. The Sea Peoples remain one of the greatest historical mysteries of the ancient world. These elusive seafaring groups appeared abruptly around the late Bronze Age, approximately 1200 BC, and played a pivotal role in a wave of destruction that brought down some of the most powerful civilizations of the ancient Near East. Yet, despite the dramatic impact they had, the true identity, origin, language, and motivations of the Sea Peoples remain largely unknown. They are mentioned in Egyptian, Hittite, and other regional sources, but never by a name that gives insight into their culture or homeland. They left behind no written records of their own, no cities that can be definitively tied to them, and no known rulers. The Sea Peoples are most famously recorded in the inscriptions of the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses III. who described a coalition of foreign invaders attacking Egypt by both land and sea during his reign around 1177 BC. These invaders are depicted with distinctive armor, round shields, and feathered headdresses, suggesting a shared military culture but not necessarily a singular ethnic group. The Egyptian text links several groups by name, but the relationship between these groups, whether they were tribes, mercenary bands, or parts of a unified confederation, is still debated. Some scholars theorize that the Sea Peoples originated from the Aegean or Western Anatolia, possibly driven by drought, famine, earthquakes, or political instability. Others suggest they were displaced warriors from the collapsing Mycenaean world, or opportunistic pirates taking advantage of widespread regional weakness. With that being said, their prominence during their peak cannot be overstated. In a relatively short span, the Sea Peoples are thought to have attacked and possibly contributed to the destruction of the Hittite Empire, sacked cities along the Levantine coast, and seriously threatened the Egyptian New Kingdom. The Bronze Age collapse, which saw the fall of nearly every major civilization around the eastern Mediterranean between 1200 and 1150 BC, is closely associated with the movements and invasions of the Sea Peoples. Major trade networks disintegrated, writing systems were lost, and urban centers were abandoned across Greece, Anatolia, the Levant, and East Mesopotamia. The Sea Peoples were not necessarily the sole cause of this disruption, but they were certainly important factors of the chaos. The fall of the Sea Peoples is as mysterious as their rise. After their defeat by Ramses III, references to them dwindle. Egypt managed to repel their invasion and later resettle some of these groups, possibly as mercenaries or colonists in Canaan. With no centralized homeland or leadership structure to begin with, the Sea Peoples simply vanished into the post-collapse societies. After their decline, the lands they had ravaged slowly rebuilt, often with new cultures and political structures. What makes the Sea Peoples so mysterious is not just what they did, but what we still don't know about them. They were instrumental in one of the most significant transitional periods in ancient history, yet remain ghosts in the archaeological record. The Tartessians were an ancient civilization that flourished in the southwestern Iberian Peninsula near the mouth of the Guadalquivir River in what is now modern-day Andalusia, Spain. Active from roughly 1200 BC to 500 BC, Tartessos is mentioned in classical Greek texts as a wealthy and sophisticated kingdom, rich in resources and trade. However, despite these ancient accounts and the discovery of intriguing archaeological sites, Tartessos remains one of the most mysterious civilizations of the Western Mediterranean. The absence of written records left by the Tartessians themselves, combined with the sudden and unexplained disappearance of their culture, has left historians and archaeologists piecing together fragments in search of a lost kingdom. Tartessos is often described as the first true Western European civilization. It was known to the ancient Greeks and Phoenicians as a land of immense wealth, especially famed for its abundance of precious metals, specifically silver and gold. Apparently, Tartessos had a king named Arganthonios, who ruled for 80 years and welcomed Greek traders. Arganthonios is the only named figure from this civilization, and yet, even he exists more in legend than confirmed history. The Tartessians managed strong trade connections with the Phoenicians and later the Greeks, and their cities appear to have been well organized, with evidence of advanced metallurgy, monumental architecture, and urban planning. Their wealth and strategic location made them a vital part of the ancient Mediterranean trade network. What makes Tartessos so enigmatic is the fusion of legend, sparse historical references, and an archaeological record that hints at a complex society which seems to vanish without explanation. Despite mentions in classical sources, the exact location of Tartessos has never been definitively identified. Some believe it lies under the Doñana National Park, potentially submerged due to changing river patterns or natural disasters. Excavations at certain sites have uncovered extraordinary structures and artifacts, including elaborate ceremonial buildings and luxury goods, but none have conclusively been identified as the legendary capital of Tartessos. The lack of written script left by the Tartessians themselves has made it difficult to reconstruct their beliefs, language, or internal politics. Tartessos reached its peak between the 9th and 7th centuries BC, and during this time, it was a flourishing hub for commerce between the Atlantic and Mediterranean worlds. Its metallurgical techniques were advanced for the time, and the Tartessians likely exported metal goods and raw materials to Eastern traders. However, by around 500 BC, Tartessian culture abruptly disappeared. The causes of this collapse remain a subject of debate. One theory suggests that Tartessos fell due to conflict with the Carthaginians, who began asserting dominance over Iberian trade routes. Another possibility is that internal decline, perhaps due to political instability or environmental changes, led to the civilization's downfall. After the disappearance of Tartessian culture, its people may have been absorbed into neighboring Iberian or Turdetanian tribes. Some scholars consider the Turdetani, who lived in the same region during Roman times, to be the cultural heirs of the Tartessians. The land itself did not remain abandoned. It continued to be an important area for trade and agriculture and later became integrated into the Carthaginian and eventually Roman empires. The story of the Tartessians lingers on the border between history and myth. Its sudden disappearance, along with the scarcity of written records, continues to fuel speculation, making the Tartessians one of the most mysterious puzzles of the ancient world. The Lycians were a mysterious and independent ancient civilization that flourished in the mountainous coastal region of southwestern Anatolia, in what is now modern-day Turkey. Although they played a significant role in the ancient Mediterranean world from at least the 2nd millennium BC until their gradual absorption into larger empires by the 4th century BC, the Lycians remain an enigmatic people. Much of what is known about them comes from external sources, such as Greek historians, Persian records, and later Roman writers, alongside archaeological discoveries, including unique tombs, inscriptions, and architectural remnants. Yet their origins, language, and cultural practices remain mysterious, making the Lycians one of the most intriguing ancient civilizations. The earliest references to the Lycians may appear in Egyptian records from the 14th century BC, where a group called the Luca is mentioned in connection with seafaring raids. These people are believed to be the ancestors of the Lycians. By the 8th century BC, the Lycians were established as a distinct people, noted by the Greeks for their unusual customs, such as matrilineal descent, in which lineage was traced through the mother rather than the father, a rarity in the ancient world. Their culture developed in relative isolation due to the region's rugged terrain, which helped preserve their language and traditions long after neighboring areas had become Hellenized. One of the most puzzling aspects of Lycian civilization is their language. The Lycian script, a blend of Greek and unique local symbols, was used primarily between the 5th and 4th centuries BC and has only been partially deciphered. Inscriptions have revealed the names of cities, rulers, and religious practices, but full understanding remains elusive. Furthermore, their architecture, especially their rock-cut tombs and monumental stone coffins carved into cliffs, stands out as some of the most elaborate in the ancient world. These tombs, often decorated with mysterious symbols, suggest complex beliefs about death and the afterlife, but their exact meanings are still debated. At its height, the Lycian League, a confederation of city-states, was praised by ancient writers such as Strabo for its democratic practices. It may have even influenced the political thinking for later civilizations, including the Romans. The League functioned with a degree of autonomy under various foreign powers, including the Persians, to whom the Lycians paid tribute, but still retained internal self-governance. During the Persian Wars, the Lycians fought on the side of the Achaemenid Empire, and later clashed with the expanding forces of Alexander the Great. Lycian independence effectively ended in the 4th century BC when Alexander the Great conquered the region in 333 BC. Though some cities resisted fiercely, most notably Xanthus, in which the people decided to take their own lives rather than surrender, Lycian culture began to decline afterward. After the fall, the Lycian people were absorbed into the broader Hellenistic world. Their cities continued to be inhabited and even prospered under Roman rule, but their language vanished, and their unique customs faded into history. The land of Lycia remained important strategically and economically, yet its cultural identity dissolved into the Greco-Roman world. Today, the legacy of the Lycians lives on primarily through their hauntingly beautiful tombs, their partially deciphered inscriptions, and their political innovations. Their mysterious origins, unique social customs, and sudden assimilation into foreign empires continue to captivate historians and archaeologists. The Scythians were a nomadic and mysterious civilization that roamed the vast steppes of Eurasia from around the 9th century BC to the 2nd century BC. Their homeland stretched from the Black Sea region across the Eurasian steppes, encompassing parts of modern-day Ukraine, southern Russia, and Central Asia. Though mentioned frequently by Greek historians, the Scythians themselves left no written history, which has shrouded much of their society, culture, and origins in mystery. They were both feared and admired by others, praised for their military skill, feared for their brutality, and mystified for their customs that seemed exotic and alien to the settled civilizations around them. One of the most mysterious aspects of the Scythians is their origin. Archaeological evidence ties them to the early nomadic cultures of the Eurasian steppe, yet their sudden emergence as a dominant power in the 9th century BC, with a distinctive art style and warrior-based society, remains largely unexplained. They are often described as horse-riding archers who mastered mounted warfare long before others in the region, giving them an immense strategic advantage. Their burial sites, discovered across the steppes, contain elaborately decorated gold artifacts, preserved bodies, and even horses. These finds, buried in frozen ground and remarkably well preserved, revealed more about the Scythians than any surviving text. During their height between the 7th and 4th centuries BC, the Scythians were a formidable force. They influenced trade routes, cultural exchanges, and warfare across a massive territory. They served as intermediaries between the civilizations of the Near East, the Greeks, and the peoples of Central Asia. Their interactions with the Achaemenid Empire, especially during Darius the Great's failed campaign against them around 513 BC, highlighted the Scythians' military resilience. They used their deep knowledge of the terrain and mobility to avoid direct confrontation and wear down invaders. What makes the Scythians especially mysterious is the duality of their legacy. On one hand, they were portrayed as brutal warriors. On the other, their mythology and rituals, mostly recorded secondhand by Greek writers, hint at spiritual practices, sky gods, and elaborate funerals. But without direct textual evidence, these interpretations remain speculative. The fall of the Scythians was not a sudden collapse, but a gradual fading. By the 3rd century BC, their power began to decline as other nomadic groups, specifically the Sarmatians, moved into their territory. The reasons for their decline include pressure from neighboring tribes, overextension, and changes in trade routes. By the 2nd century BC, they had lost control of their core territories around the Black Sea and retreated further east. After their fall, many Scythians were assimilated into the rising cultures of the steppe, specifically the Sarmatians and other Iranian-speaking nomads. Some Scythian communities survived in Crimea and the surrounding regions for centuries in smaller, fragmented groups, but their distinct identity eventually disappeared. The Mississippian culture was a mysterious and sophisticated Native American civilization that flourished in the southeastern and midwestern regions of what is now the United States from around the years 800 to 1600. While not as ancient as some Old World civilizations, the Mississippians developed a complex society with urban centers, a far-reaching trade network, and a shared religious ideology, all without the use of metal tools, wheels, or written language. Despite the grandeur of their largest cities, specifically Cahokia, and their vast influence across the Mississippi River Valley, the Mississippian civilization vanished before European settlers could fully document it, leaving scholars with more questions than answers. At its peak between 1000 and 1350, the Mississippian culture was the dominant force in eastern North America. Their largest and most iconic city, Cahokia, located near present-day St. Louis, Missouri, was once home to an estimated 10,000 to 20,000 people, making it larger than London at the time. The city was centered around a vast plaza and dominated by Monk's Mound, a colossal earthen pyramid that stood over 100 feet tall and covered more than 14 acres at its base. Such construction required sophisticated planning, engineering, and organized labor, evidence of a powerful, centralized society. The Mississippians built hundreds of similar structures across the region, many aligned with celestial events, suggesting an advanced understanding of astronomy and timekeeping. What makes the Mississippian culture so mysterious is not only their impressive achievements, but also the speed and silence of their decline. By the time European explorers reached the Mississippi Valley in the 1500s and 1600s, many of the great cities had been abandoned, and the people who once built them dispersed into smaller, less centralized societies. The reasons for this collapse remain unclear and are the subject of much speculation. Some theories suggest environmental degradation, such as deforestation and soil exhaustion due to intense agriculture. Others point to social unrest, warfare between competing chiefdoms, climate change during the Little Ice Age, or the introduction of Old World diseases that preceded European contact through trade networks. One of the most astonishing aspects of the Mississippian culture is that it had no known writing system, so the names of its leaders, its political structures, and its belief systems are lost to time. Oral traditions from descendant tribes provide some insight, but much of the civilization's religious practices, which involved human sacrifice and complex structures, remain only partially understood through archaeological interpretations. Symbols found on pottery, shell carvings, and stone tablets hint at a shared belief system, often referred to as the Southeastern Ceremonial Complex, but without written explanations. Their full meanings are speculative. Following the civilization's decline, the people of the Mississippian culture did not vanish, but instead integrated into emerging tribal nations. The lands once occupied by Mississippian societies were later settled by European colonists, often without awareness of the ancient culture that had flourished there. Many of the mounds were destroyed by agriculture and development, though some, like those at Cahokia, have been preserved and studied. The Mississippian culture continues to fascinate historians, archaeologists, and the public because of its grandeur, sudden decline, and the absence of written records. The civilization's rise and mysterious disappearance remain a compelling chapter in the story of ancient America. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you learned something, make sure to leave a like. Comment down below your thoughts on any of the ancient civilizations I discussed in this video, and subscribe if you would like to see more like this one. Thank you again, and goodbye.